Welcome to How Leaders Lead. I'm Koula Callahan here with David Novak to bring you another edition of 3 More Questions. David, I'm excited about this one. How are you today?
I'm doing great and looking forward to doing this. So let's get going.
Today we're debriefing your conversation with Jared Belsky. He's the CEO of Acadia, which is a massive digital marketing agency. And if you aren't in marketing, don't stop this episode because Jared's leadership insights can apply to any leader and any company leading any size of team. And David, I'm going to dive into some of the concepts you talked about with Jared, and I'm going to have you talk about how those concepts apply to folks outside of the digital marketing arena. So let's get going.
The reason why you should probably listen to this podcast is that you're not in marketing. You need to have that learning mentality, and everybody that runs any team or any business has got to understand the customer and has got to understand the tools that you can reach customers with. And marketing ultimately has to become something that at least becomes something that you're competent at and that you don't derail because you're not good at it. So, I think that's the main reason to listen to this.
It also reminds me of one of my favorite Novakian statements, which is, as a leader, you should think like a marketer. Get inside the minds of the people you lead in the same way that you get inside the minds of customers when you're trying to market a product. So I echo that statement, David, even and especially if you're not in marketing. Go back and give the full episode with Jared Belsky a listen. And keep listening to this conversation because we're about to dive into our 3 more questions. Question number 1. To be successful in the digital marketing arena, Jared says that you have to, quote, stay close to the keyboard. And what he means by that is you have to stay close to the details and have a deep understanding of the data that really matters in your business. David, what's the secret to staying hands-on with all those details without getting bogged down in them?
Well, I think, details are important as long as you tie them to the big picture. They got to work up to the key things that really do matter in your business. So you can go into detail, for example, on all the sales numbers that exist in every county in America, but it really doesn't matter. What really matters is that you know what your sales growth is, and you understand where the areas are that are really driving the sales growth, and the areas that are taking you down. But, you can't get bogged down in everything. You got to be looking at the data to discover those key points. So, in the restaurant business, for example, same-store sales growth was really critical. So, we really had to understand the dynamics of same-store sales growth. The other thing was new unit development. We really needed to know how many new units we were opening and where, and whether we were behind or ahead of what our plan was. And the third thing is that we invested a lot of money in building restaurants and improving our restaurants. So we had to make sure we're getting a great return on investment capital. So these were the big 3 things that you really had to really understand. And I always started out by looking at the big picture of those three measures, and then if there was an issue, then I would dive deeper and go deeper to really understand it. And the other thing is that as a leader, sometimes it's not your job to be into every detail, but make damn sure that there is somebody on your team that's their accountability and they're into the details, and then they can bring you issues that might exist that you might not be aware of. So, I tried to look at things on a macro basis, the key things that really mattered, and then I like to have somebody who I knew was really on top of everything that would bring whatever issue that needed to be dealt with to my attention.
You've said something before, David, that really stuck with me, and you said, every detail is not created equal. And I love that insight because when a leader who's in charge of a lot of things hears details, I feel like a lot of them just roll their eyes and say, well, I can't afford to be in the details. Like I have to stay kind of high level. But when you identify the details that really matter and move your business forward, like you did in the restaurant industry with those 3 key metrics, it's those areas that you just have to be tethered to the details or else you lose the plot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I think that's a a very important thing for every leader to really to determine is like, what are those key measures? I remember going to one of the companies that I worked with in my career, and we had like 100 measures. I mean, it was like, oh my God, there's no, people can only remember 3 of the 10 commandments. Okay, and that's if they've really read the Bible.
If that.
Exactly. And so what makes you think that having 100 measures is going to be beneficial? That just leads to bureaucracy and a notebook that somebody feels really good about that they've created. So I think you have to cut through all that clutter and really work on understand what really matters most.
Question number 2. In the episode, Jared explains the concept of a dysfunction tax, which is where larger entities build up kind of all these pointless meetings and politics, and people are spending half their day making PowerPoints for a boss they don't even like, basically just tons of bureaucracy. Imagine, David, that a leader is dealing with this dysfunction tax, but they say to you, well, it's always been this way, so there's nothing I can really do about it. What would you say to that person?
I would say that's BS. There is something that you can do about it. When you see something that is dysfunctional, it's your job to raise that issue with your team and explain why it's dysfunctional and then offer up a solution. This is a kind of a small example that I remember when I went to Pizza Hut and we had this big franchise convention we were all getting ready for. And they had this process where everybody brought in their speech that they were going to give to the franchisee and did it in front of 20 people and everybody picked at it, and I said, hold on a second. We've got senior vice presidents here who ought to be able to do a presentation. And why do you want to sit in here and get, all this so-called constructive criticism to help you do your job, when what I really needed to do was to do my job and then ask my coach, my boss, to take a look at the presentation and say, hey, am I missing anything here? And that was it. I didn't need 15 other people opining on what my presentation would be like. And I remember being in that meeting and I stood up and I said, what are we doing here? This is so bureaucratic. Everybody's wasting their time. I know what I'm doing here. Yeah, I need some help, but I'm going to get the help from my boss. And, if I think I need some more help, maybe I'll seek one of you guys out or one of you ladies out to help me. Okay. But, let's go back to work. Okay. And let the people who've got to give the presentation do the job and get the feedback on their own.
There's nothing that annoys team members more than pointless bureaucracy. I mean, nobody likes it. So I feel like I hear a lot, we have all these meetings, but we've always done them, so we're going to keep doing them. And to your point, David, earlier, I mean, that's BS, right? It's like, it's a waste of time. Everyone knows it's a waste of time. Let's just call a spade, kill the pointless meetings, and get on with our work that we have to do.
Couldn't agree more.
Question number 3. I love Jared's take on talent management. He believes that the general problem leaders have as it relates to talent management is that they're so busy being polite that they're not coaching people up to their greatest potential or helping them find a better fit if what their role isn't working. What would you say, David, to leaders who are kicking the can at offering coaching to employees who maybe aren't cutting it?
Well, when you're the leader, that means you basically have people reporting to you, and your job is to make those people better. And if you don't make them better, and you don't make a team better, and you don't get better results because you're improving your team, you'll ultimately lose your job. And so you better give the feedback if you want to keep your job. I mean, that was the kind of feedback I would give to people who weren't giving their people the feedback they needed to have. You're in charge for a reason, so do your job. And you can't kick coaching down the road. You got to coach when you see it. I didn't like quarterly coaching sessions. I did them, okay? But, I think they were important. But what I liked was daily coaching. If I saw somebody do something good, I told them it's good. If I saw somebody do something that wasn't so good, I would tell them, hey, you might want to think about doing it a different way for these reasons. But you have to coach on a real-time basis, because when you do that, Koula, that's when people really get what you're talking about, because you're staring what just happened right in the eyes, right in the mirror. It just happened. So that's when people will really understand what you're trying to share with them, because you could be really specific and you can help them. And I always found that to be extremely productive.
In the episode, Jared talks about the curse of the sixes. He says, if you basically grade your employees on a scale from 1 to 10, which he doesn't do, but you kind of know who your rock stars are, your 8s, 9s, and 10s. You kind of know who your 1s, 2s, and 3s are too. It's clear that it's not a good fit, so they got to go. But those people in the middle, like 5, 6, and 7, where they're not quite a rock star, but they're not so bad that it's obvious that they need to go. Like, don't let those people stall out, and don't let those people just stay at a 6. Like, have the hard conversation, have the uncomfortable dialogue that you need to have, and get those 6s to a 10, or offer them a pathway to a different role.
It's a great point. It reminds me of one of the podcasts we did with Jeff Yang. He said, you got to look at people and, say everybody wants A's. Everybody wants A's. And if you get an A, man, you do everything you can to keep that A. B's are really good. You got to have a lot of B's. You got to have a lot of B's if you're going to really build a great company. But C, he says, C's are like cockroaches. You just can't get rid of them, okay? So you better make sure that you don't tolerate the C's, because once they get in the cupboard, they're going to go rampant, and it's going to be harder than hell to get rid of. And I think both Jared and Jeff are basically saying the same thing.
So good. I love it. Squash the cockroaches. Get them out of there. Well, thanks so much, David. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of How Leaders Lead. We're on a mission to make the world a better place by developing better leaders. And if you carve out a little time with us each and every week, we'll help you build the confidence you need to lead well.
And coming up next on How Leaders Lead is Heidi Ubroth, the president of GlobalCon and the executive co-chair of Pebble Beach Resorts. So stay tuned. It's really a great one.